Thank you, everyone, for joining this webinar hosted by the Morrison Center for Marketing and Data Analytics. I am Andres Terech, the Associate Faculty Director of the Center. I'm joined here today by Randy Backline, the Faculty Director of the Center. We both want to extend a warm welcome to everyone and thank you for joining. As you all know, customer retention is a critical component in the study of customer equity and customer lifetime value. At the Center, however, we believe that this important concept has been understudied relative to its importance. Therefore, today we have two experts on data analytics, customer equity, customer retention, and customer loyalty to share with us their expertise on these topics. We are very delighted that both have been able to join us. And so let me introduce you so we can hear from you. Our first guest is Andrew Apple. Andrew Apple is the founder and CEO of Up Capital, a company devoted to advising and supporting clients in their digital transformation. Most recently, Andrew for many years, Andrew was the CEO and president of IRI, one of the original innovators on the big data space, a company dedicated to provide its clients with customer, shopper, and market intelligence, especially with a keen focus on the retail industry, CPG, and the healthcare industries. In addition to that, through all these years, Andrew has been the senior advisor, has joined the advisory board of many different companies, too many to list. And very importantly, Andrew is a Bruin and we're a very good friend of the Center and the school. So we thank you, Andrew, for accepting our invitation to moderate this conversation with Stuart Aiken, the CMO and Chief Merchant Office at Kroger. And I'll let you please introduce our good friend, Andrew.
Thank you, Andreas. First of all, welcome everybody. We are delighted to have my good friend Stuart Aiken here. Stuart and I have known each other for close to 10 years, let's say. And when the Center asked me to think about who could speak to the value of retention and the importance of high-value consumers and high-value relationships with consumers, the first person that came to mind was Stuart, and Stuart was gracious enough to accept this invitation, the one of many, I think, over the years. Stuart has had many distinguishing roles in this space. At some point, I think he was the head of the Americas or dunnhumby, which was an organization that specialized in loyalty. That became something called the 8451, which those of us who are in the retail grocery space know as Kroger's analytics and insights arm. And more recently, I think over the last 3 years, Stuart has been both the chief marketing officer and chief merchandising officer of Kroger. And for those that don't know, Kroger, I think of all of the retailers that I've ever had a chance to spend time, which is in the dozens, prides itself on how to think about building relationships with consumers.
Very good.
So I think we'll open with that. Since you've had so many years thinking about this, is what is your, or the organization's just general philosophy on customer management and the importance of, new consumers versus, for the vernacular of this conversation, retained consumers?
I love it. And quite frankly, Andrew, I could talk for hours on this, and welcome everybody to the webinar. But for us, the philosophy is very simple and very unique compared to how most companies, most businesses think about customers and think about lifetime value, think about retaining customers. And that is rewarding the behavior you seek. So, every single business, and it's variable based on the industry, has a Pareto curve of customers. And typically you hear terminology like the 80-20 rule. For us, call it the 30-70 rule. But every industry is different. The largest Pareto curve I've seen is jewelry, where it's 1 or 2% of customers representing 80-90% of sales and profitability. Well, for us at Kroger, it's how do we reward those consumers, those customers who reward us with their shopping behavior versus going out and looking for a whole bunch of new customers. If we retain our existing customers, the value of that customer is significant. And since they are patronizing us already, why wouldn't you reward that? And that's the philosophy. And we have multiple mechanisms that we use to reward that behavior. And those come in the form of mailers that are truly personalized to the consumer. But if you can contrast that thinking to others, as you well know, if you have two brands, typically you would have two brands in the same category wanting to trade a customer from one brand to the other. For us, it's how do you reward that behavior? But rewarding that behavior means shifting your dollars, shifting your investments to the customers that are most valuable to you. When dunnhumby first started working with Kroger, and you alluded to that earlier, one of the first things we realized was we were over-investing in customers who were cherry picking us. So we'd have a great deal on soda, let's say, for example, and customers would come in, buy that and that alone. And that was a disproportionate share of our dollars we were investing. So for us, it's very much how do we then shift those to those customers who are patronizing us on a regular basis.
And talk a little bit about that journey in terms of level, interaction with how do you find them? Obviously was step one, maybe not, but presumably trying to understand the characteristics of, a high value, important loyalist. How is that, let's say, over the last 5 to 7 years evolved in terms of how you interact with that shopper, how you have, honed the art of treating your best customers as your best customers?
It's a great question. And I like the way you framed it up in terms of it being a journey, because it genuinely is. And you don't get there overnight. The biggest part of the journey was moving, for example, the example I gave, trade dollars, trying to move those dollars to investing in customers who frequent you on a regular basis. That was a hard shift, a hard and many-year journey. Then taking our marketing dollars and investing them in the consumer by offering them what we call our loyalty card mailer. That journey started with, call it a few 100,000 customers once a quarter, to now a mailer that goes out every single month to as many as 13 million households. And those are the 13 million households that are most valuable to Kroger. And rewarding them by offering them discounts on, a novel thought, items they actually buy, versus trying to switch behavior. And most companies will say, well, you don't buy this, so let me reward you for that. Instead, we want to say thank you to our customers. And in fact, that mailer on the front of it says thank you. And so how do you start thanking customers? And by thanking them, by investing in them, what we found is a greater lifetime value with that customer. And it is a journey. I can tell you this does not happen overnight. From a trade dollar standpoint, from a marketing dollar standpoint, moving those investments, ensuring it's working, growing from a couple of 100,000 to 13 million, it takes years. And it takes the organization buying in. And it goes back to your very first question around philosophy. You have to ensure your entire organization is bought in to that same philosophy. Yep. Otherwise, moving dollars is really, really hard.
Now, I was fascinated with something like what, as you've evolved this journey, what has worked, right? As big data, I'm very familiar. We're sitting here in the 8451 home office, an incredible number of talented people. What's worked, and so therefore has become part of the evolution, like whether it be modeling, LTVs got more accurate, gee, that's made a difference, or identifying future stars column, has that been tried and worked? And what are some lessons in that journey? And then on the second half, I'll ask is then where do you think it's going in terms of the science of understanding? Because in the end, it's not just a number, like they're worth this. It's in my view, it's a customer experience that they feel.
That's right. And
that isn't always done by 800 data scientists who kind of understand this and that the trip behavior.
I'm actually going to touch on the second part of your question, then I'll go back to the first. But just touching on the first, that emotional connection through data is incredibly powerful when you see it come to life. And the best example I have of that is we see a number of customers posting YouTube videos thanking Kroger for their loyalty card mailer. I'll never forget this mom on YouTube with her phone just saying, Kroger, you've no idea how much I needed these coupons, how much I needed these discounts. I'm at the end of the month, I'm at the end of my rope. And then you see a little child run by and she's thanking Kroger for helping her. And you see that and you go, oh my God, this thing's working. Back to that emotional thing, that experience, you're making a difference. And you share that with everyone and it just begets more momentum. But getting back to your first point, and that's a driver for everybody, right? But getting back to your first point on what's worked, what hasn't, lessons learned. Man, we failed an awful lot. And anyone who tells you they haven't pushed the envelope hard enough. And we failed many times. We thought this mailer on coupons would work with everybody. It doesn't. Not everyone's looking for discounts. There are others who are looking for inspiration. And so we came up with multiple iterations of what that inspiration might be. Have we nailed it? No. But in terms of size and scale, that inspiration mailer, we call it My Magazine. And again, it's a thank you to customers, but it's much more driven around inspiring cooking and trying new products and the likes. We're up to about 4 or 5 million households we send that to now. I'll tell you, when we hit 13 million, we've got success, but we keep building upon it. When we first started it, again, we sent out 200,000 mailers or My Magazines. Failed, learned, failed, and had multiple tests with them. Tests around, is the inspiration around new items? Is the inspiration around recipes? Is the inspiration around coupons, even with combinations of all of them? Testing and learning is, quite frankly, the best and most fun part of the journey. And no mailer goes out without significant amount of tests and learns within every single one of these. The journey is long. Expect failure. If you don't have failure, you're not pushing hard enough. But I'll tell you, we failed many, many times over the last 20 years working on this.
And, you know, as the science is then sitting behind the emotion, that's the way I may be wrong. You're nodding your head validating. How do you think about the science of the analytics, right? Do you use LTV as your measure, change in LTV? Do you have multiple measures, SAT measures to determine whether you're making, progress every day or material progress every year on the 30, to use the 30/70 algorithm? What do you use as your scorecard or measurement?
It's a great question. And we likely have many of you out there from different industries. So I'm going to speak to that in the context of a customer, a household, or potentially a business. Here's the issue. Whether it's an individual, a household, or a business, or an institution, it's variable. So a household of, let's say, 8 people, or a household of 1 person, a business that is large, a business that is small. Understanding share of wallet, regardless of business or individual, is critical, right? And so many times people talk about LTV, but LTV without the context of what is possible is really, really, it's not fair. And you land up dealing with generalities versus specificity. And that specificity allows you to talk to a customer in a much differentiated way. Good example, a household of 8, a household of 1. Household of 8 may be spending, let's say, $400 with you, and a household of 1 spending 100. But if that share a wallet with that 1 individual is, call it 80%, how you talk to that individual versus the household of 8 has to be very, very different. Even although the lifetime value of that household of 8 is 4 times larger. So being clear on what that means, and then how you interact with that customer, where you have a share of wallet that's 80, or a business that has a different share of wallet based off of size and scope, is incredibly important. And that's the beauty of the analytics and the science, is being able to get to that level such that you really do reward that 1 customer, and then the other customer, how do you incent them to come more frequently? How do you incent them to drive more baskets? How do you look at the analytics to say, are we covering all the bases for that individual customer?
Yeah, it's interesting to think about the trade-off between, and I'm sure you think about this a lot, high share wallet, low wallet, medium share wallet, high wallet is probably a different segment effectively.
Absolutely. You just created that 2x2, right?
Yeah.
And even within the 2x2, you can create clusters. And I would argue even those clusters are too ambiguous. And so how do you, everyone talks about the ambition of getting to 1-to-1. With the analytics that are out there today, with the ability to truly target at an individual level, we are there. We are here today. And in fact, we used to use some of IRI's technologies, Andrew's technology, to be able to get down to that individual level. So the ability to do that is here now. And so I would argue, don't use generalities. And the best example I have of generalities, if you forgive me for a minute, is just because I'm the same age as you, we live next door to each other, we both have the same 2.2 children. Doesn't mean my tastes and preferences are the same as yours.
Yeah.
I'll eat a haggis, he won't go near it with a barge pole. So the question becomes, demographics don't mean anything. Behavior means everything. And then how do you reward the right behavior and truly talk to the individual, not talk to the cluster that is a group within that 2x2.
Yeah, because it's interesting as you extrapolate into other industries. People will talk about serving the same customer with a very divergent set of services, which is much more difficult to create an experience than having a more narrow set of experiences with a broader set of clients.
Yeah, it's a great point.
All right, now turning to the two complex, one opportunity and one complexity. How do you, being call it an intermediary channel for many large and important brands that work with you every day, how do you cross those together? Like, how do you link a P&G or a Kraft into the customer retention, share wallet value experience you're trying to create? How do you bring them along that journey so that it matters to them as well?
And it's a great question. And again, regardless of industry, the CPG industry has the same issues most retailers do in terms of, well, and I'm not going to name CPGs, but a particular CPG, a particular, right,
has third parties,
and they want a new customer, and investing in an existing customer isn't always the best immediate return, which is why you look at lifetime value, which is why we're talking about lifetime value, because it's not the investment today, but it's the investment over time and what does it produce over time. And what's that value over time, not my value next week. And having that longer horizon helps get over that hump that is, well, what's my return on ad spend for this short period of time? And again, that's shifting mountains in terms of trying to move dollars to
Absolutely.
retention to long term. But it is having a long-term view on what that customer, what that household, what that CPG might get out of investing in thank yous versus investing in switching behaviors. And it's way too easy to invest in switching. And part of the issue as well, quite frankly, is you have brand managers who are looking to move up, right? You have category managers who are looking to move up. And there are short-term tactics that you could deploy to boost your sales. But I would argue it boosts the sales for the short term, not the long term. And everyone's going to then say, yes, but I want to get promoted, I want to move up, etc. But if you can show a sustainable long-term business model that really does work, you do change the model. And I would also say, even for that CPG who's looking for switching, where are you looking for switching down that Pareto curve? Same with a retailer. That back to my point on Kroger, the 30% that represents the 70%. Why not look at the 31st%, the 32nd%, and that next group of customers to convert them versus going outside to somebody else? That Pareto curve is long. That tail goes out for a while. And how do you start working and delivering and changing the behaviors of the people you have with you today, not someone who's completely outside of your business realm? You also have data on those households, which is invaluable too.
Yeah, no, I believe that the industry at large, I've always thought after a couple of years of doing this, that would benefit from a multi-year measure effectively.
Absolutely.
And that loyalty isn't just a retail question, it's a brand question.
Absolutely.
And the industry, my industry, right, which is, or my former or current or wherever advisory, has yet to really build a multi-year measure, as well as it has built a series of short-term measures, share, ROAS, you referred to that.
That's exactly right.
And if we could institutionalize a multi-year, like a loyalty measure for a brand that correlates with a loyalty measure for a retailer, you could change the nature of how dollars are spent on consumers.
You're exactly
This
right.
is my,
No, you're exactly.
been my soapbox.
Yeah. The problem, of course, is most of these companies are public companies, which means you have to report every quarter. So how are you doing today? How are you doing today? And so building a culture within an organization, it's why your first point was so important around this notion of a journey. And how do you start picking it off one at a time? And Kroger's done it over the last 20 years, building pieces of this lifetime value that's based on households. And yet every quarter we're expected to deliver. So
Yep.
it's a tough thing to do without question. And it's a very different philosophy, but it's the right philosophy for a sustainable, long-term viable business.
I'm sure you have done this analysis, so I'm going to ask a specific, have you found a correlation between the 30%, we'll use it as an adjective, the important customers, and the importance of those customers to your brands?
Oh, absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And
Because
so every single brand
the
has
key,
it. That's
right? So that it is in their best interest, because they're the people who are loyal to Kroger. My assumption, strong hypothesis for the years I've spent around this is that they would be loyal to the brands. And
Yeah.
so it's a win-win to focus energy on those consumers, because people are natural. It's almost like a human characteristic as well as it is a
That's
service proposition.
That's right.
Um,
So without question, every single CPG within ours and our own brands as well, which is about a third of our business, have that Pareto curve. How well are you managing that Pareto curve is what I would ask every brand and every business, regardless of vertical or industry.
yeah, no. And as an aside, I think the COVID turned it around and spun the dryer on that whole experience because of the urgency and the supply chain and all the issues in terms of both perceptions of retailers' ability to deliver against their value proposition and brands as well.
Yeah.
Switching topics. Now that moving forward, right, Kroger, you're in a digital era, a digital world. Kroger, I just was fortunate enough to spend some time with one of your colleagues, Cara, and we're talking about precision KPM and Kroger Precision Marketing. And how does that start to play in as you move from 98% physical retailer, which I could ask a different question, which is how do you differentiate the experience of the store? As someone who flies often and as a certain tier of status with an airline, I'm always surprised that the experience is the same, but we'll leave that.
Right.
The price is the same and the onboard experience is the same, which I think is the primary two characteristics of the product. But how do you envision, the digital world and the ability to communicate and the infrastructure or capabilities you're building around direct to consumer messaging and dialoguing, evolving the ability to execute the strategy, because I'm not going to ask
Yeah.
the strategy, because I don't think that's going to change.
Right. No, it's a great question, and quite frankly, it makes it a lot easier in the digital environment, right? One of the things Rodney, our CEO, likes to talk about is this notion of zero compromise. How do you offer customers a shopping experience with zero compromise? So be able to get an order for pickup in an hour, be able to get a delivery in 6 hours, be able to get one of our trucks delivering to your doorstep in 8 hours, being able to go to the store and have the same experience from a pricing standpoint. How do I have zero compromise on a gallon of milk, regardless of modality I shop? That's incredibly important for us and for the customer. Just because they want to shop online, why do they have to pay more? That's incumbent on us as a retailer to be able to deliver an experience that they want at the same price. So that's the first principle we have out there. The second one, around your question of how do you then deliver a better experience? We know a significant number of our customers create shopping lists, whether they're shopping in store or online. Well, the benefit of the data we have is we can create a predictive shopping list. You know, we're all creatures of habits as humans. And how do you save the consumer time? Time is something that none of us get back. You and I know that. We're old. It's something we never get back, but it's something we can offer as a value to consumers. And in the digital world, we have a unique opportunity to save the customer time, whether that time is building a shopping list, creating a shopping list, starting my cart, or if that time is going to the store and shopping. But there are customers who genuinely love it. I'm one of them. I actually love going into the store, love shopping. Online is great. It's convenient and saves me time. Now my job's a little different, so I need to be in the store. But for certain segments of customers, being able to save them time is huge, but save them money as well, right? So if I can show a product that you might be able to save a little bit more money on, that's fantastic. And for certain customers, that's incredibly important. But if I can show a recipe that you can just click and add to cart and have everything in that recipe added to my cart immediately, that saves time, massively valuable. So every customer is different, but in the digital realm, you can take that personalization aspect of somebody wanting to save time, somebody wanting to save money, somebody wanting inspiration. You can do 1, 2, or 3 of those all layered upon one another in that environment so much easier than you can in a store environment.
Yep. And personal view is we're still in the early innings.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Of the quality of that, whatever, iPhone or Samsung Galaxy interaction. We now, where a quarter of the interaction or an eighth is through an electronic,
Right.
5x7 that still presents a relatively
That's right. That's right.
average experience, in my
That's right.
opinion. As good as some players are, it is still shockingly identical.
Yeah.
Search, blah, this,
That's
there's
right.
not a lot of emotive connection.
Yeah.
So that's, again, adding my personal opinion. One more, a couple more topics on just to those thinking about, the management of this. So we've talked about the 30%. And I'll use the analogy of, a bucket, right? 1% comes, X% come in, X% leave. In a perfect world, you'd be really good at knowing who are the right X% that you want in because you model out their next 10 years of their life or something. And that you'd be good at the save, right? Kind of knowing when they're at risk of falling out of the bucket.
Yep.
And I know we talked about it, we've spent
Yeah.
time on this topic before. What has been your experience of finding someone who next year will join the high value club, and then finding someone who is behavior is demonstrating that they seem to be falling out, other than if you take out, they move to a city that doesn't have a Kroger owned retailer or a property.
So it's a great question. And I love the analogy of using the bucket, right? We all have a bucket of customers. Too many businesses, back to the Pareto curve, too many businesses are looking for another faucet to fill that bucket. Not enough businesses are looking for holes in the bucket to fill it in order to keep the customer. So I really like that analogy. We are looking for the holes in the bucket. And those holes in the bucket can come in a number of forms, and customers tell you through the data that you've got a hole. And that hole may come in the form of multiple phone calls to your call center. That hole may come in the form of we do secret shops of our stores, and a store consistently getting a low rating may come in the form of that. It may come in the form of being out of stock on certain products on a regular basis that particular customer buys. There are signals and there are frustrations that every customer exhibits. We are not great at predicting, but what we have learned is the further or the closer you get to the early frustration points, the greater the likelihood of saving that customer from leaving. Once you've passed a certain threshold, it's really hard to bring them back. So how do you apologize and course correct what it is we as a retailer is doing earlier in that cycle? We found to be much more successful. And then from predicting those who are likely to keep increasing, for us, it's understanding that share of wallet early, understanding, so I'll give you a little secret sauce there. Looking at the number of categories a customer buys with you is a very good predictor of how long they might stay with you, right? And so there's little attributes like that that have much more longer term impacts on the behavior, on their lifetime value with you, et cetera, et cetera. So finding those nuggets, finding those bits and pieces within each of your industries is critical to understanding lifetime value.
That's fast. No, because that can be applied across any industry, right?
Right.
What I just heard, I think, if I play it back, is the window isn't that big for to lose a loyal customer.
That's right. That's right.
It's an action, it's a something, and you have the longer you lapse in recovery, the more and this has factually been proven out, the more likely
they will.
And I think whether you're a fitness club or a car dealer or a phone maker,
you bet.
I think that lesson, I bet, permeates just the general notion of minimizing the departure bucket.
That's right.
And then I think what I thought I heard, which is interesting, going back 10 centuries to some work I did in insurance, that and this isn't rocket science, but most insurers have auto, home, and life. And if you had all three lines in the house, the retention rate was materially higher than 2 or 1, because auto in particular is a heavily shopped product.
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
bill
Number
pay
of categories, exactly.
is those. And so these are not just grocery
Example.
lessons. These are, I'm going to close with one question, because I know it's a passion of Stuart's and was and may become a passion of mine. But we live in a data-driven world. It isn't just applied to grocery and retail. There are 100 startups out there trying to think about how to improve people's health. Underneath all these shirts have a Fitbit, an Apple Watch, an Aura. And I think there's been immense investment in claims mining,
Mhm.
health claims mining, immense investment in genome mapping, obviously in, delivery of mRNA. But I've always thought, and you articulated in one of our calls, that what one eats is probably the leading indicator of, maybe genomes comes first if you have a proclivity for cancer in your family or something. But much of what happens in our country is from how people, call it the conduct, the behavior, right? Whether it be food or fitness. Those are my two, food or fitness.
Yep.
And I know you wanted to talk a little bit about your belief on where Kroger could play a role in that, as we wrap this up.
I love it. And this truly is a passion of mine, but it's a passion of Kroger Health and our president, Colleen, who's a big believer in this too. But if you look at the 5 biggest disease states in America, they're all food related, whether it's hypertension, heart health, diabetes, you name it. It's all food related. And how do we get to the point where we help consumers in ways that make it easier to understand the impact of what they put in their mouth has on their bodies and their long-term health? And the analogy I like to use there is, how do we Apple Watch food and nutrition for consumers? Because it's really hard. If you've ever tried a calorie app or whatever app, it's really hard to maintain that and do that. But it's something that 8451 is passionate about, is how do we help customers? How do we make their lives easier? And there's nothing bigger than potentially turning around some of the massive costs this country has in healthcare. This country has because of food-related illnesses, and we can help. And by the way, we have an opt-up app today where we'll show you a replacement food for that food. But that one nugget, right? Everyone's going to say, well, don't eat bacon, eat broccoli. I'm not going to stop eating bacon. I'm sorry. But if I'm at risk of hypertension, what if Kroger were able to say, hey, don't eat this bacon, eat this low sodium bacon, this low sodium salt, this low sodium soy, this low sodium butter, lots of little changes can have a dramatic impact on your total sodium intake, changing the lives of Americans. And for Kroger Health, that's something we aspire to do and aspire to help. But that's taking data again and leveraging it in a way that's great for consumers. But before we go to the professors, there is one more thing I want to touch on, and that's privacy, because I think it's just as important in this discussion. Andrew talked about it. We have 1,000 data scientists right in this building that Andrew and I are sitting in right now. They do not have access to PII data. It's critical to us. So you can't identify Stuart Aiken. It's just a number. And those individuals, those analysts cannot access PII data. And the very few people we have who have access to PII cannot access the behavioral data. And we have definitive lines there.
That's great.
Such that privacy is paramount in this organization. Without it, we got nothing. If the consumer doesn't trust us, that's the problem, especially from a health perspective, and it's all about trust.
That's what I was just gonna say. The on the health thing, I think what I have found interesting in our recent discussions is that, you know, one, and hopefully you hear in the tone from Stuart, and I think this fits any organization that wants to care about consumers, that you care about consumers, right? Consumer first, right? All of the analytics and all of the lifetime and this is all about creating a low-cost, high-quality experience for your consumers.
But customer first.
And they feel like maybe you know, hopefully you care a lot, but at least you care for them. And that would include health.
That's right.
And it can be done. What triggered it in the last couple of times we talked about this is that you can do health in a way that increases the likelihood that they feel like you care about.
That's right.
And then,
that's the
or
key.
you could do it like ways that don't, right? Like you're eating too much bacon, here's some broccoli. I mean, that is not,
Right.
there may be a very small percentage of the population that
That's right.
wants that message, but in general, a softer in this together kind of here's some options. I think this could be fascinating and fantastic. And then the second is, you know, in the end, any company, you know, what they are is an amalgamation of their clients. That isn't how Wall Street sees it, it isn't how private equity sees it, but it is the reality of having run a company and you know, running a company, which is, you know, if you care for your consumers or your customers and you always do what's right for them and you add value, it's a miracle that they stick around.
Yeah.
Whether it be you as one of my clients or me as one of your consumers.
That's exactly.
All right, guys.
Also,
Wonderful. This has been fascinating. You know, so many great things from, of course, the beginning and understanding the importance that Kruger puts in, you know, rewarding its loyal customers as opposed to chasing those who are, you know, at risk to leave and those who are not really coming back. So just a great insight and not trying to acquire more customers. The analogy of the buckets and the faucets and the hole was like a perfect one to really put into respect, something that sometimes in academia, we don't really pay too much attention. And we, as maybe directed by those short-term goals of, you know, hitting those short-term numbers, that we put more emphasis on those acquisitions of the customers and not much on the retention, which clearly you brought up is an important, it's a great important topic. More so, you always said that in a class, any class that is well taught has a 2x2, and you came out with a 2x2 in this class, in this webinar too. So that's fantastic in many ways, right? So, and to top it all, you know, this importance of and this integrity with Kroger's approaches customers, thinking not only in helping and on what they bring to Kroger, money, but also what Kroger can bring to them in terms of helping them live a better life, a more healthy life, which is, you know, wonderful in many ways. We have asked some our participants to submit questions ahead of time. So there's many of those, but I just at least want to post at least one of them and maybe two if we have time to, so you can address. One that I think is very pertinent to the time we are living on, which is how has inflation affected Kroger's ability to approach retention and to work on retention? And what have you learned from it? What has worked, what has not worked, what has changed? This will be one of the questions that was addressed by many of their participants.
A great question. And obviously apt for our time right now. I will tell you, inflation has been really tough on our customers, incredibly tough. And it's something we struggle with every day, is passing on those costs as we get them from either our CPG suppliers or even our own brands. It's incredibly tough. And what we do is, rather than, let's say, if we're getting a certain commodity that's getting an increase in inflation, we look for where we can maybe spread that inflation across the portfolio we have versus necessarily sticking it on that one commodity, that one item, because if that item is crucial for, let's say, a group of customers who are just trying to feed their families, we try spread the pain to other areas versus one that is critical to customers. And with the data and the science we have, we know which items are most important to which customers and which customers are going to hurt the most, and how do we alleviate that as much as possible. So that's one piece. The other behavior we've seen is, let's say, I'm going to say high-end stores, high-end grocery retailers. We've seen a huge migration of those customers to Kroger. And we see that as a phenomenal opportunity for us to show them the value we have with our products. The incredible Murray's cheese, for example, our high-end cheeses and the likes, that you can get incredible quality at a phenomenal value. So we've seen that. At the same time, we've seen customers who really struggle every single month moving to the, I'll call it cheaper grocery retailers. And it's those customers that we're trying to plug the hole on by offering them deals, offering them more value on the items that they want the most, and bringing them back into Kroger. So we've seen this huge shift. And at the same time, we see opportunity with both customers and how you talk to those customers. And it's exactly why personalization matters. It's exactly why we're having this discussion on long-term value of customers, understanding that this customer is still looking for unbelievable quality, but this customer here is looking for unbelievable value. And how do you talk to them very differently? Right. And that's our key, and that's critical for us. So that's probably some of the biggest macro changes we've seen from inflation.
Wonderful, wonderful. And to piggyback on that, I think we have probably time for one more question, and related to Andrew's discussion and bringing into light the changes in the digital shopping that we have. One other questions that was proposed and reached by many of our panel, our audiences, is what are the best practices that come when customers have more information? Because when you shop online, you have access to, if you could shop to the store, you're constrained to what is available in your store, and you don't do, while there are some customers who do store shopping, while you're in the store, you're more committed to buy the basket within the store. But when you are on a digital world, it's much easier to click away and just shop, and you have all the information in your hand very quickly. So how has your approach to customer retention has changed, given consumers access to competitors' information? That was the other.
And another great question from the audience. For me, that one just speaks to what we know about the customer and how we can deliver value. And unfortunately, it's probably similar examples to what I've shared already. For those who are coming and looking for price, showing the value, the promotions we have. When we have a promotion, no one beats us on price. Nobody. Doesn't matter who you are. When we have a promotion, and so showing those items that you buy that are on deal is most important. But for somebody who's looking to save time, showing a start my cart, I can do this in an incredibly fast period of time, faster than maybe a competitor. Now I'm giving you value that you want, not necessarily the value that we as a retailer perceive you want. So It's variable based on the household, based on the needs of the individual, and that's that. And you are right. They can go and shop multiple places online, and price is the best example of that. But showing you value, promotions that we have, we know we can't be beat.
Excellent, wonderful. This has been.
I would also, I'm going to add a little one to that one, just because,
You've been in the industry for so long.
you know, and I've seen every, call it multi-entity electronic. You would, who the group on the video would be surprised how the the behavior isn't what it would appear to be in marketplace like comparative pricing. So if you were to go look for a price compare app in a particular city across multiple retailers, you'd have a hard time finding it. It would be based on a panel, a biased sample. Point one. So it isn't as easy as one thinks. The prices aren't always the same online versus in store for many of the players. I suspect they are for Kroger because it's probably a policy.
That's right.
It was a guess.
That's right.
I had no idea. Many, it is not the case. Point one. So therefore, this online compare world isn't what it's made out to be, because versus there is a population, because my wife's best friend is one that figures out how to go shopping for free because they're coupon, they're the coupon cutters that figure out, brand indifferent. I can somehow leave with $100 of groceries and get a rebate of $3. Apparently a black belt at it. I think the third phenomena that that is absolutely proven, and we proved it by looking at one retailer's behavior online. So there's basically 3 modes of purchase and 3 modes of pickup. We'll start with the simple one. You can walk in a store and buy, the mode is the same. This is a 3x3. You can order online on the proprietary site of the retailer and have it, you pick it up, have it delivered to your car or delivered to your home, or you can order through an aggregator, Instacart being the best known, and then you can have those 3. You don't get the option of picking up in store, but you can pick up. It isn't clear those electronic order platforms, except for the one-to-one, the first box, which is the owned are less expensive. Point one. And two, because we did this work, consumers actually search less when they go through the online experience, because the online ordering platforms are designed to get you to buy the same 20 things. So we did do a study. I suspect you've done it, but we did it with a different retailer that looked at the loyalty to a product. Share of requirements is the wonderful technical term of, let's say, a tomato paste brand for an in-store buyer versus an online buyer. And the average increase in loyalty from buying off the app was 15%. Which therefore did not demonstrate higher shopping, but in fact, lower shopping. And so at that moment, we said to many of the brands, don't get behind the online experience. It was one of the legends of Amazon 7 or 8 years ago. They created, companies you'd never heard of in the coffee category, which is a very repeat purchase, very important category in a high value shopper, because it's bought often. And the top 10 on Amazon were not Folgers, Keurig, or whatever. I think that's changed.
Yeah. So sadly, our time is up, and I really want to thank everyone for coming. I sorry to cut you there, Andrew, at the end, but of course, we want to thank you, our special guests, for their time and their knowledge, and for their openness to share the company strategies and their experiences and expertise with us. For the Morrison Center specifically, we're really pursuing more events, webinars, and programs and activities related to customer retention. We believe that this is an important topic and we'll continue to do more on it. So please stay tuned and wish you everyone a wonderful afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.